up on this Tuesday edition of Newsline at noon, South Korea makes it clear that it won't lift economic sanctions or scrap joint military exercises with the U.S. just to bring North Korea back to the negotiating table. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe says he will drop key phrases of remorse for Japan's past wrongdoings from his August statement marking the 17th anniversary of the end of World War II. Plus, Korea's consumer sentiment rebounds for the first time in 4 months in January, but doubts linger over the strength of the economic recovery. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. It's noon Tuesday, January 27th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this afternoon. We start with the slowing momentum for inter-Korean talks. South Korea's proposal for dialogue with North Korea has now gone unanswered for around a month.
Now, Pyongyang has since laid out a list of preconditions that must be met before starting talks, but Seoul says it's not willing to consider them. Park Sang-hee has the details.
South Korea says it has no plans to consider North Korea's demands for returning to dialogue. Unification Ministry spokesperson Im Byung-chul said Monday the preconditions laid out by Pyongyang are issues that could be discussed at the negotiating table.
For fundamental improvements in inter-Korean relations, South Korean government believes it's not appropriate to accept North Korea's unjustified preconditions before any talks are held.
One of the key preconditions laid out by the North is canceling the upcoming joint military drills between South Korea and the United States. The state-run Nodongshinmun newspaper on Monday reiterated that inter-Korean relations will meet a dead end if the exercises take place as planned. The paper claimed that the trust between the two Koreas will only be restored after the joint drills are called off. Seoul and Washington say the annual exercises are defensive in nature, but Pyongyang calls it a rehearsal for invasion. Amid the inter-Korean tug-of-war, chief nuclear envoys from South Korea, the U.S. and Japan will meet in Tokyo on Wednesday to discuss issues related to North Korea. South Korea will hold a separate vice ministers meeting with the U.S. in Seoul on Thursday. Amid fears of a possible loss of momentum between the two Koreas, the Unification Ministry says its month-old offer for dialogue still stands and that it's waiting for North Korea's response. Park Sang-hee, Arirang News.
North Korea launched a river-crossing attack exercise to counter U.S. hostilities and protest the latest anti-Pyongyang leaflet campaign by South Korean activists. The state-run Korean Central News Agency said Tuesday that Kim Jong-un guided the winter drills of the regime's frontline troops, saying a powerful offensive means rock-firm defense. It did not specify the time or venue of the drills. Now, in a separate report, Pyongyang condemned the latest leaflet launches by South Korean activists and claimed Washington wanted to topple the regime. President Obama said in a YouTube interview late last week that North Korea is likely to collapse due to information disseminated via the internet. And it has emerged that North Korea has introduced a regulation last year that would allow it to detain South Korean businessmen at the joint Kaesong Industrial Complex if it found the businessmen were not carrying out their contractual duties. Seoul's Unification Ministry said Monday that it told North Korea in verbal and written messages that it would not accept the new bylaws. This after North Korea notified Seoul of the changes in September. The ministry says the North has no legal basis to detain South Korean businessmen in the complex, adding that the highest level of punishment would be having them sent back to South Korea. Pyongyang has yet to respond to Seoul's latest comments on the matter.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has hinted his statement to mark the 70th anniversary of Japan's defeat in World War II may not include key phrases of remorse over its wartime atrocities. As a victim of Tokyo's past wrongdoings, Korea is watching developments extremely closely. Park Ji-won has more.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has suggested he may not include key expressions used by previous administrations to show remorse over Japan's wartime wrongdoings. Abe is set to release a statement in August, marking the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. In a televised interview, he said, "It's not about whether we use expressions that have been repeated in the past." Although he plans on inheriting the spirit of previously issued statements, he added that he wants to put out a statement that represents his administration's stance on the 70th anniversary. The Korean government expressed concerns on Monday. Seoul's foreign ministry said if Abe is sincere about upholding the spirit of previous apologies, his new statement should include expressions that could heal and improve relations with neighboring countries. Abe's stance has also garnered criticism in Tokyo. The leader of Japan's main opposition Democratic Party, Katsuya Okada, among others, called his remarks intolerable, saying it will deny the peaceful path that Japan has taken over the past 7 decades. In a statement in 1995, then Prime Minister Tomichi Murayama expressed deep apology over his country's colonial aggression, which caused tremendous suffering, to mark the 50th anniversary of Japan's defeat. And in 2005, then Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi used similar key expressions in his statement on the 60th anniversary of the end of World War II. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Japan's government has promised to keep using diplomatic channels to secure the release of Japanese hostage Kenji Koto, but admitted that it's yet to make direct contact with his Islamic State kidnappers. Tokyo says it's coordinating efforts with other countries, especially Jordan, after the group amended its ransom demand to a prisoner swap. In its latest video posted by IS, a man's voice, purportedly Goto's, reads a statement saying that he would be freed in exchange for the release of that woman there who is facing the death penalty in Jordan for taking part in a series of hotel bombings around a decade ago. Japan's Deputy Foreign Minister, who was sent to Jordan to work on the crisis, has promised to not give up until they save the Japanese hostage.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea. Connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on NEWSLINE at Noon with Mark Broome and Eoh Jin-joo.
I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
Market researcher, strategy analytics, and Thursday the LG Electronics.
Consumer sentiment in Korea this month rebounded for the first time in 4 months. Now, this might sound like positive news, but actually the index indicates that the improvement is not strong enough to suggest the sluggish domestic economy is quite out of the woods yet. Hwang Jie explains.
Consumer sentiment in Korea improved for the first time in 4 months in January. The Bank of Korea says its consumer sentiment index came in at 102 this month, up a single point from a month earlier. The figure, however, is lower than the level posted last May when consumer confidence was hit hard by the Seoul ferry disaster. The central bank also attributed the uptick to a general trend in which a rebound takes place after 3 straight months of decline, rather than a sign that the economy is on a solid recovery track. It added that the index has never fallen for 3 or 4 months in a row, except for cases when there was a major shock in the domestic economy. Still, a reading above 100 means optimists outnumber pessimists. While the monthly index that reflects the overall economic outlook of consumers fails to strengthen signs of recovery, this year's forecast among local exporters does not look so bright either. A survey conducted by the Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency on around 900 exporters shows that more than a third of them are skeptical about economic conditions this year. Less than a quarter said they felt positive, while the rest said the conditions should be manageable. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
And the gloomy economic outlook for Korea is not only reflected in a sluggish consumer sentiment, but also in how it's getting harder for people to move up the income ladder. A recent study shows that the rich are staying rich while the poor are staying poor. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
It's getting more difficult to climb up the socio-economic ladder in Korea, particularly for those living under the poverty line. A study by the Korea Institute for Health and Social Affairs shows that a mere 23% of the population escaped poverty in 2014. That's the lowest rate of escape since the first study in 2006. This means 1 in 4 to 5 people managed to escape poverty last year and move into the middle class. The percentage of people who went straight from the lowest income bracket to the highest without spending time in the middle class increased by a mere 0.3%, an eighth of that recorded 8 years ago. The study also says that the rich are likely to stay rich. More than 77% of those in the high income bracket in 2013 remained in the same income bracket in 2014. On the other end of the scale, the number of people who filed for bankruptcy and signed up for debt workout plans soared to 110,000 last year. The study blames labor immobility for the lack of movement across the socio-economic ladder. 83% of those with temporary positions in 2013 said they were unable to find a full-time job in 2014. A near 93% of those surveyed had full-time jobs during the same period. The situation was different for people who own their own businesses. Nearly 78% of business owners with employees in 2013 said they were in the same position in the following year. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Korean Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan says government structural reforms must be carried out even in the face of protests and criticism to create a better country for future generations. In a casual meeting with some 20 university students on Monday evening at a local pub, Choi reassured that the ministry's top priority is reducing the nation's youth unemployment rate. He stressed that the reason why the government is pushing ahead with reforms is to provide young people with more high-quality jobs. Addressing concerns of female students about continuing on with their career after marriage and childbirth, the minister vowed to make a favorable environment for working moms by easing regulations and providing tax benefits.
The government is going to pour hundreds of millions of dollars into boosting creative industries in Korea's provincial areas this year. In its first Regional Economic Committee meeting of 2015, the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy said it's going to inject some $549 million into facilitating local industries in the innovative sectors. This follows a mid-term development plan established in September last year that designates 14 provinces and cities as hubs of different industry sectors in an effort to try and enhance synergy. A handful of creative economy centres will also be launched nationwide in the first half of this year. Korean battery and chemical materials maker Samsung SDI plans to pump more money into its business this year. In its fourth quarter performance announcement on Monday, Samsung SDI said that it invested some $440 million last year, and it's going to significantly bolster investment, particularly this year on polymer batteries. Now, polymer batteries are mainly used in vehicles, laptops and smartphones. The leading battery maker raked in some $1.75 billion during the fourth quarter in revenues. Operating profit came to about $37 million, but there was actually a net loss of about $120 million. While on-quarter revenue and operating profit slightly increased, the net loss was mainly due to last year's merger with an affiliate. Now, global oil prices have more than halved over the last few months, but drivers in Korea aren't really enjoying most of the benefits, at least as much as they'd expect. Our Kim Min-ji reports on why Korean prices at the pump are still rather lofty.
Global crude prices have been on a downward spiral in recent months. However, gasoline prices in Korea haven't been falling as quickly as local drivers would have liked. Dubai crude, which accounts for nearly 90% of Korea's oil imports, traded at $93 a barrel during the first week of October last year, but has since plunged over 50% to $45. However, at the pump, the average price of a liter of gasoline fell from about $1.70 to $1.30 over the same period. This is only a fall of 18%. Why the big difference? Industry officials point to a string of taxes levied on oil consumption. Ex-factory prices of gasoline have indeed fallen in line with global crude prices, but consumers face transportation, road, and education taxes totaling some 70 cents per liter, plus a 10% oil consumption tax. With the taxes largely fixed, their proportion in consumer gas prices has surged. The tax currently makes up over 60% of gasoline prices, up from 54% 3 months ago. But consumers aren't the only ones dissatisfied. Gas stations are also battling it out for customers and are doing all they can to slash prices, even at the cost of falling profits. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And time now for a look through the global headlines we're following this Tuesday lunchtime. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, standing by at the News Center.
Eunice, Greece, now with a new anti-austerity leader at the helm, faces the multi-billion euro question of how it's going to try and renegotiate the country's massive debt.
Right, as was promised by Greece's new Prime Minister, Alexis Tsipras, who is, of course, fiercely anti-bailout. And as EU comes down on Greece, there is the question of whether the differences will eventually push the country out of the Eurozone. Our Shin Se-min has the details.
No debt forgiveness. Europe seems willing to give Greece more time to pay off its debt, but will not give in to the new government's demand for debt forgiveness, saying a further debt reduction for Athens would go against Eurozone rules. Greece's new Prime Minister, Alexis Tsipras, had called for forgiveness of nearly a third of its more than $300 billion debt. The new anti-austerity posture shown by Greece pits it directly against Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel. In fact, a spokesman from the German government urged Greece to fulfill its commitments to its European creditors, a sentiment that was backed up by the group of Eurozone finance ministers. The Eurogroup chair said Eurozone financial leaders are ready to work things out with Greece, but that there's little support for a write-off in Europe, and Eurogroup members should abide by the rules and commitments.
So there is still a major work to be done in which we will support the Greek government on the basis of true cooperation and commitment. And that's the basis on which we will work.
There are now rising concerns that Greece may want out of the 19-member group in the coming months. French President François Hollande said Greece must stay in the Eurozone and respect its financial obligations by keeping its debt repayment promises. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And staying with Greece, 10 people have been killed and several others injured when a Greek fighter jet crashed into a parking area at a military base in Spain. Spain's defense ministry said the F-16 was taking off from Los Llanos Air Base as part of a NATO training exercise when it lost power and crashed into a parking area for other planes. Both pilots were killed, as well as 8 French nationals. Local reports said mechanics and pilots were positioned under an aircraft when the fighter jet lost control. 21 others are said to be injured, several of them seriously. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg called it a tragedy that affected the entire NATO family as he extended his condolences to the grieving. Travel bans are in place in much of America's Northeast as a monster blizzard described as crippling and potentially historic begins to wreak havoc. Winter storm Juno is expected to pack hurricane-speed winds and dump up to 90 centimeters of snow, with its strongest punch to be felt Monday night through Tuesday local time. Ahead of it, a state of emergency was declared in the states of New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Massachusetts, Massachusetts as thousands of flights were grounded in and out of the region's major airports. School is canceled for Tuesday and public transit set to be shut down in New York City in less than an hour as all non-emergency vehicles are banned from roads. Meanwhile, Ukraine's government has issued a state of emergency of its own as the country's, or rather on the country's eastern areas partially controlled by pro-Russian rebels. Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk ordered the regions of Donetsk and Luhansk on Monday to be on high alert amid the escalating conflict. This as NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg dismissed an earlier claim by Russian President Vladimir Putin that NATO forces were fighting with Kiev's troops. He said the allegations were nonsense, adding that foreign forces in Ukraine were Russian.
Now, moving on to some sports news. South Korea has sealed a spot in the final of the Asian Cup for the first time in 27 years after they comfortably beat Iraq 2-0 in last night's semifinal.
Yes, in what was an enjoyable match, striker Lee Jong-hyuk and defender Kim Yong-kwon scored a goal apiece in each half of the game. South Korea has yet to concede a single goal in this tournament. They play 5 games now. The team will take on either the host nation, Australia, or the UAE in the final in Sydney on Saturday evening. If you want to watch that, kickoff is scheduled for 6 p.m. Korea time.
And Disney's latest film, Big Hero, is winning rave reviews around the world for its quirky yet heartwarming story and amazing animation.
Yeah, it really is a great movie. I've seen it myself. But this movie that was released in Korea just last week is also garnering a lot of attention here because it has a very interesting connection to Korea. Our Son Jung-in has more.
Strong, agile, smart and cute. This is Gogo, a female character in Disney's latest film, Big Hero. She's the first animated character inspired by a Korean actress to hit the mainstream. Her creator is Kim Sang-jin, the first Korean to become a top designer at Walt Disney Studios, who also designed Elsa from Disney's 2013 award-winning film, Frozen.
Gogo is, I think she's the only one character who can take care of herself without anybody's help.
When creating Gogo, Kim and his team originally thought of South Korean actress Bae Do-na and her courageous character in the movie The Host, and then incorporated independent and athletic traits from Korean short track skaters.
It was overall a very hard work. Teamwork also played a big part in the project.
Baymax, the main character's lovable companion, has a balloon-like face with eyes connected by a thin line that evokes the image of a moktak, a wooden percussion instrument often used by Buddhist monks. Korean-American actress Jamie Chung and actor Daniel Henney also participated in the film as voice actors.
It's a movie with a huge Disney heart, a lot of action, and some amazing messages that I think apply very well to what's going on in our society today.
The animated adventure of a young robotic genius and his superhero team has warmed the hearts of moviegoers around the world and also aims to top the box office in Korea. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Well, it feels like midwinter again after temperatures dropped rapidly overnight, and the perceived temperature is still down to -7 right now here in Seoul. And all of that means today will be an icy cold Tuesday, but it will be even colder tomorrow with lows kicking off at -8 here in Seoul. But at least we won't be getting any snow, unlike people in Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-do provinces who will have to deal with a very heavy snowfall of up to 30 30 centimeters into tomorrow. So if you're in those regions, be extra careful of snow. In the meantime, the rest of the country will have mostly sunny skies throughout the day. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. We'll have a high of 0 in Seoul, while Daegu and Gwangju rise to 6 and 4, and Busan will peak at 10 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island will rise to 7, Daejeon will top out at 4, and it will be a snowy day for Dokdo with a high of 3. Well, that's all for Korea. Stay warm, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that does it for this edition of Newsline at Noon.
Jin-joo and I will be back at the same time on Wednesday. Until then, goodbye.